One sound is saying, "You aren't worth twopence," but neither is anybody. Watch it, be severe. The other says, "Go with it, give and swerve. You are everything you feel beside the river." So, in these few lines, Seamus Heaney is again talking about the two different sounds, the two different opinions, the two different approaches. And as in the previous stanza, I talked about the two different theories that were very popular and are still quite popular in the present world as well. That is the theory of capitalism and socialism. So when he talks about the sound saying "you aren't worth twopence," but neither is anybody, watch it, be severe. He is probably referring to socialism here, because socialism, it emphasizes on the importance of state. Individual was not free to make his own choices. Individual was not free to have his own property, have his own house, run his own business. Everything was owned by the state, and the individual had to work for the state. So when he says "you aren't worth twopence, but neither is anybody, watch it, be severe," he is probably referring to socialism. Then he goes on to say, the other says, "Go with it, give and swerve. You are everything you feel beside the river." He is referring to capitalism here. This is the point of view of a group of critics who believe that in this stanza he is referring to the theory of capitalism and socialism. So he says, when he says "go with it, give and swerve, you are everything you feel beside the river," he is referring to capitalism. And capitalism, it gave the individual freedom to make his own choices, to own his own property, to run his own business of his own choice, and he did not owe anything to the state as such. So these are the two different approaches or two different theories which and the conflict between these two approaches have divided the world. And we have seen 20th century, it was on the verge of Third World War due to these two approaches. And it has resulted, though the Third World War was avoided, but it has resulted in a Cold War between the superpowers. I love hushed air. I trust contrariness. Years and years go past, and I do not move, for I see that when one man casts, the other gathers, and then vice versa, without changing sides. So Seamus Heaney here once again is telling us about himself. I love hushed air. So he has his own opinion. He has his own nature. He has his own personality. So he says that though I am a different person from what Ted Hughes is, I have a different opinion from what he has, but he says, I trust contrariness. I have full faith in contrariness. And here he says that this trust in contrariness has enabled them to have a strong bond. Here he echoes the romantics as well. The romantic poets like William Blake and Keats, they also shared the same kind of ideas. William Blake, he said that without contraries there is no progression. When we go through the odes of Keats, this is what we see in Keats' odes as well. The contrasting principles at work with each other. And in William Blake, we saw through the poems of Songs of Innocence and Experience how the two contrary principles, he has presented those contrary principles, and he believes that the world cannot exist without these contraries. The contrasting principles like black and white, good and bad, hell and heaven, evil and good, angel and devil, so man and woman. So these all contrasting principles, they move together, though they are contrasting, though they are opposing forces. But due to the presence of these opposing forces is progress. That is how the world progresses. So when he says, I trust contrariness, we can see that he is carrying forward the ideas of the Romantics. And in these lines, he has, when he's talked about the two different sounds, the two different opinions, the two different theories, different philosophies, two different ideas related to religion, he has basically shown his faith in contrariness. Like the Romantics, he also believes that without contraries there is no progression. And then he goes on to say, years and years go past and I do not move. So, though years have passed, both of them, Seamus Heaney and Ted Hughes, they have been friends. They had different opinions, but not one of them budged away from his opinion. He says, I do not move. I do not change my opinion. I do not change my personality. I do not change my nature. He has categorically said that I love hushed air. I have my own point of view. And this cannot be changed by somebody else's point of view. Nobody can influence me. Because then he goes on to say, for I see that when one man casts, the other gathers, then vice versa, without changing sides. So it's not needed that you should, in order to coexist, in order to have a strong relationship, you should be influencing each other. You should be changing your sides. Because when one man casts, the other gathers. As he has in the previous stanzas, he has told us that casting and gathering, they are both the two different phases of the same process. It can be compared to a coin, as a coin has got two sides. The two sides of a coin make it a coin. Similarly, two different opinions, they can result into a very strong bondage. They can result into a very strong friendship. Two different parts of a process can result, like casting of seeds, can result into harvesting of crops. And this makes farming a very rich experience. Casting of a fishing line into the river and then gathering of the fishing line can result into a very beautiful experience, that of fishing fish. So similarly, two different approaches, whether they are the two different religious approaches, whether they are the two different political approaches, it does not mean that it should result in conflict. It does not mean that one should be imposing his ideas, his opinions on the other. Two contrary persons, two contrary ideas, they can coexist. But what is required is tolerance. For a peaceful coexistence with contrary ideas, with contrary opinions, what is required is tolerance. Tolerance to accept the opposing and different ideas of others, because that only can lead to peace and harmony. And this is what he is trying to convey through this point, that this world which has become a very bitter place to live in, this world which is divided into two opinions and um, two ideas, two different approaches. This world can be restored back to peace on the basis of peaceful coexistence, on the basis of the principle of tolerance. Because only then can this planet of Earth can be restored back to peace. Thank you.